Hi, I'm Danny,
I'm Sam.
and this is in a Brew.
We'll be poring over business stories,
And talking about things that interest us in the world of business.
so we'd like you to just take a few minutes out, listen.
Yeah, we'd love it if you join our conversation with us. This episode contains themes that may or may not be upsetting to some people. Sorry. Hi.
Hello?
You're going to horrify me today, aren't you?
Oh,
Trigger warning.
yeah, there is one.
Well, it's not a trigger warning, it's a bit gross. So if you're not good with gross.
It's a bit grim, and it's just how some things that are created for apparently the benefit of human beings actually becomes the benefit of a corporation that's actually selling it to human beings. What do you know of an IUD, Danielle?
They're not those things you stand on that blow you up.
No, it's an IED, yes.
An IUD, like the coil.
Yeah, pretty much. And what do you
I
know
know
that they're like? What do they look like?
Despite the fact that every time I say I'm an actual coil, they look like a little T shape and their little arms are in and then they spring open.
Yeah.
And then it sits there like a little T.
All right. What we're going to be talking about today is a thing called the Dalkon Shield.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an invention of a doctor, or a couple of doctors, but the notable one was Dr. Hugh Davis, who's a fellow.
Yeah.
Back in 1968.
Famously known for his use of the vagina.
And this invention, which is an IUD, which is designed to physically prevent pregnancies.
Like a literal shield.
Pretty much.
Right.
Yes, that's what it was. Yeah. It's very... I don't need to be too graphic here, but it doesn't resemble anything that you might think would be streamlined enough to go in.
No, you've got a picture and it looks a little bit like a beetle about the size of... bigger than a 50p piece.
Oh, yeah, bigger than that.
About the size of a base of a Coke bottle.
Ping pong ball size, maybe?
Ping pong ball. And it's got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 legs, so 5 on each side. And then some kind of nylon tail.
Yeah. Correct.
I mean,
good observation.
It looks like an alien.
Yeah, it
an
does.
Alien bug.
Yeah. So it was sold to a company. The invention was sold to a company called A.H. Robbins in 1970, and they owned Robitussin, who was a cough medicine company at the time. That's all changed now. It's under different ownership. But anyway, this IUD was supposed to give women freedom as an effective contraceptive, and it became administered, in inverted commas, in the 1970s by family planning clinics in the US. And by 1972, 59% of all IUDs fitted, that's what you call them really, fitted, were Dalkon Shields. Okay. Now, roll forward.
So many questions. Yeah.
Yeah, roll forward a few years.
Yeah.
A Minnesota judge in 1983 described the Dalkon Shield as instruments of death, of mutilation, of disease. So there's a bit of a story here, about how this thing designed to give women freedom actually became something that actually ended up killing some and actually doing...
Because, basic questions.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any smaller than that, so I'm not sure how you're getting it in. It doesn't look like it collapses anyway. I'm not sure how you're getting it out. I mean, those are my basic questions.
Okay,
those are the things I'd like to know first.
Okay, got the features of it. So it was by its very shape and construction unusual. It was about 1 inch long, shield shaped, 1.5 inch long maybe, shield shaped, almost like a crab kind of shape, with finger-like projections that projected downwards when it was in its right position. It was coated with copper to act as a spermicide and had a multi-filament retrieval cord. And now it was inserted through a tube into the uterus.
But if that's 1.5 inches, how big's the tube got to be?
It folded up and then it unfurled once it was ejected at the other end, once inside. Okay, all right. So, I'm crossing my legs at this anyway. But the thought of it, there were immediately the problems. It was reported to be incredibly painful to actually insert, with patients reporting agony.
Please stop miming with your hand.
All right. Even a doctor, I don't have a name for him, but a doctor wrote to A.H. Robbins and said, "I have found the procedure to be the most traumatic manipulation ever perpetrated on womanhood, and I've inserted thousands of other varieties," talking about IUDs. Also, once it was in, it was very difficult to remove as the finger-like projections dug in to the uterus wall, which were designed to prevent the body from expelling it.
Which by definition means you can't get it back out again.
Yeah, and often became embedded, and therefore significant damage and
Would
pain
your body
resulted.
heal over the...
Well, it's the physiology.
Yeah. Because it's a foreign object.
If it can't be expelled, the body has a way of dealing with that, which is to grow around something. But significant pain and damage could be resulted from the removal. More disturbing than that, if you think that's disturbing enough as it is the retrieval cord.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it kind of makes sense now, but at the time it didn't. So the retrieval cord was multi-filament.
Yeah.
So it was like string, multi-filaments
like plaited
in it.
string.
Or twisted,
Right,
and it had like a sheath that was over it.
Yeah.
But that dangled out through the cervix, and allowed for it to be removed. Okay, if it could be. But by their very nature, multi-filaments, they're different strands. So any bacteria that was present before the cervix could basically become a harbour for bacteria, which could then wick up inside the cervix.
Like with your dirty light pole in your bathroom.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
That was a horrible metaphor.
Yeah. It was described as a superhighway for germs.
Oh, God.
To breach the cervix being a sterile environment, after all.
Not with that thing in it, one.
No. Now, Robbins, the producers of the device, even suggested that bacteria arose because of incorrect medical procedure, blaming it on the doctors that were actually putting it in there. Of course, they would. And there was a process of denial, a regular denial. So, can you possibly imagine what might happen if bacteria were allowed to have free reign to...
Yes, I can imagine what would happen. I don't want to talk about that.
Okay.
That's gross.
So women actually lived with the device in place for many years without discomfort or problems.
Because obviously...
They weren't aware of it.
They all have a shelf life. Because it's a foreign object, the copper coil I think is 10 years and the marina coil's 5 or 7. They're foreign objects. They have a shelf life. But if this is it, does this not have a shelf life?
I don't even know what the shelf life was. I've not been able to find anything about that.
Because they couldn't get it out anyway, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, but there weren't reported to be any problems at first, but the damage was being done internally without anyone knowing about it. And ultimately, cases were reported that it created scarring within the uterus. It could dislodge and float into the abdominal cavity.
One would assume with scarring that would make you infertile anyway,
or potentially. Depending on where it is, because of the multi-filament introduced bacteria into the sterile environment of the uterus, acting like a wick. It led to infections, PID, pelvic inflammatory disease, septicemia, miscarriage, septic abortion.
Miscarriage? You should be pregnant anyway. You've got a shield in.
But sometimes people did get pregnant, even though it was there. Because not all...
Nothing's 100%.
Leading to hysterectomy in some cases and also death in some cases. Now, even though there were early reports of complications, the manufacturer continued to market the product aggressively. They were earning tens of millions of dollars at the same time. And also the original inventor as well, It's a total disregard for patients' or women's health. Now, there have been estimates, and I've read several estimates, that are between 100,000 and 300,000 women in the US who've made claims against the company. And there was a case in Denver in 1979, an award of $600,000. Compensatory damage was given to a plaintiff, and punitive damages of $6.2 million. So the victim got $600,000, and the punitive damages came to $6.2 million. I don't know where they went. And over 3,000 cases costing them about $70 million.
Wow.
In 1982, there were 1,500 lawsuits pending, a total of $2.8 billion in compensation. Now those don't kind of correlate to me. 1,500 for $70 million and 1,500 with 2.8 billion. There's some odd figures out there. A federal judge, Miles Lord, is quoted to have said, "Your company, in the face of overwhelming evidence, denies its guilt and continues its monstrous mischief. You have taken the bottom line as your guiding beacon and the low road as your route."
He was a bit of a drama queen, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. Well, he had a chance, didn't he, to say something.
He liked a bit of alliteration.
"This is corporate irresponsibility at its meanest." Wow, what a quote. They eventually announced bankruptcy in 1985, but the trust fund was set up to compensate the claimants. They finally accepted, which is reported to have been between 600 million and 2.3 billion. Again, those figures are so vastly different. But the company was sold in 1989. The new owner was, I don't need to go into who they are, but the new owner was able to reduce that because it basically saved a bankrupt company. So I understand how that but the company was actually really profitable beyond that. But and some claimants were awarded a range of damages between 1,000 and 1 million, depending. And mild symptoms and having to raise a baby who was badly affected by what was considered here was there was a widespread fraud committed by Robbins in denial of the harm it was causing, and there was an appalling lack of FDA, Food and Drug Administration, overwatch, as there was no regulation of medical devices at first. But in 1976, this was extended to include medical devices. So seems to have had an influence on that. Even once the device was proven to be harmful in many cases in the US, the company sought out new markets. Okay, so where would it go?
It's not working here, so we're going.
Where would it go?
The developing nations where they don't argue back.
Yep, Australia, across the other side of the planet. And developing nations, and this then extended the damage to women's bodies way outside the US. But also, I've read reports on, originally in America at least, the device was inserted by a medically trained professional.
Oh, no, don't.
Yeah. But the simplest form of training was given in literally a few minutes.
Don't worry, just shove it in, it's fine.
Yeah. By 1989, over 7,000 women were seeking damages from the company. Yeah. So that's not so very long ago.
No.
So there's a bunch of lessons that come out of this, which thorough clinical testing is essential, and not enough time was spent on that. It was rushed to market.
But I would even say that even if there have been clinical testing, it's only causing women some pain. Let's just shove it in. Don't worry about it. I'm sure it does its job. It feels like, despite any kind of testing or process that was in place, it was designed by, it was created by, it was marketed by, it was a business for people who genuinely did not care about the end user.
Yeah.
It served a purpose and it made money for them. So actually, I don't disagree with you. I do think clinical testing is essential, and I think other things could be learnt from this. Yeah. But no one thought about the ideal client at any point.
No. I think what's clear is the shape of it did the job, but where the real problem became actually was, all right, in spite of the pain of insertion and extraction was one thing, but actually that cord is what I think caused most of the problems. It's probably the worst of the bacteria. Problems, yeah. Those that are implanted in the body must go extensive clinical trials these days, and those are some lessons learned. Design flaws can have catastrophic consequences. Again, the multi-filament string, and continuous monitoring has to be part of that. So it's a new device. How many people has it been inside? And an acceptance of feedback. Because I think what lacked in this massively was the company was just like, no, on us. No. It's definitely that chap over there who put it in. It wasn't me. Yeah. So I think constant monitoring and that taking responsibility for the feedback you're getting. Okay, we made a mistake there. You're right. It would be better if it was a, sterile cord or whatever it is. It's just disgraceful. Yeah, quite. But further than those two, corporate responsibility. Priority of safety of patients over profits. And that's the triple bottom line you've talked about before. You need to have those people involved as well as the profit. Yeah. Ignoring or concealing adverse effects. Protect your financial interests is unforgivable. Yes, it is. Of course, informed consent as well. Because if a patient had known there were potential problems, they probably would have decided not to have that. But they were doctors were continued to be marketed at aggressively. You need without to use really understanding both sides of the story. Yeah, so they weren't adequately informed, and they must be. informed. Regulatory oversight, absolutely necessary. The FDA dealt with that subsequently, of course. Post-market surveillance of what's happening, and then compensation and legal accountability.
Yeah.
Those are what you would hope would be certainly for drugs, but now for medical devices since 1976.
And that makes a medical device on the external of your body is one thing, but a medical device that affects the internal workings of your body, that's quite different. Yeah.
There are actually even some stories about whistleblowers that concerns were made, but were dismissed. Were dismissed by the company. Only once the lawsuit started going through did it become obvious that a lot of those whistleblowing attempts have been suppressed.
Yeah.
So whistleblowing sounds like a horrible, snitchy, telltale thing to do, but actually where you see misdemeanors being conducted by your employer,
and you feel you've got to say something. Yeah.
Surely it's everyone's duty to try and say something. It's a bit of a horrible story about there's a corporate miscreants here on a fairly large scale.
It is, but it's also just completely misunderstanding who your customer is and what they actually need. That's like creating something for the sake of creating something rather than genuinely understanding what your customer needs. And if you don't look at that first, you're never going to get something that works. Yes. I know this is an extreme example of that.
Your customer in this case needs something safe that's going to prevent them from getting pregnant, having a baby.
Yeah.
And not
kill them,
maim them, seriously affect them, harm them, or actually jeopardise their ability to actually ever have a family again in the future. Yeah.
It's disgraceful.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I wish I had. The positive side of this is all the lessons were learned there, and actually anything that's been produced ever since by any other company,
that is
certainly in the US and probably the UK and probably the whole of Europe.
Yeah. Market research is very important, though. You ask any woman, she could tell you she does not want that.
Okay. Right.
That looks creepy like an alien. No, thank you.
Yeah, just one look at it.
just no, thank you.
Yeah. How are you going to get that in? Yeah.
Yeah. How are you going to get that out? What's the point? Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you.
Okay.
So no more male doctors inventing for female bodies.
No. So
and don't have sex.
Okay. Yeah. Then that wouldn't be needed in the first place.
Exactly. Just solve the problem at the root.
You have a way of cutting things down to the simplest form.
That's it. I have taken all of that and distilled it down to don't bother having sex. It's obviously dangerous.
We're going to end on that note then?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I hope it doesn't give you nightmares.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening and being a part of today's episode.
If you like what you've heard, or if you feel there's something missing, or you want to ask any questions, please get in contact.
And if you love listening to us as much as we love talking to you, subscribe, download, leave us a review. All the love helps.
Thank you.